Okay, so what we're working on in this section, section 2.3, solving inequalities with multiplication and division. So remember, inequalities are less than, equal to, greater than, or equal to. Remember, the two without underlines are an open circle. Less than goes to the left, greater than goes to the right. And then my two with the underline are closed. And again, less than or equal goes to the left, greater than or equal goes to the right. Okay, so what's nice about this is it has the same rules. To get rid of a times, you're going to divide. And then down here, to get rid of a divide, you're going to multiply. So those are rules that you're familiar with. But it's this one right here. This is the most important thing we have. And this is the one thing that some people will miss. And the rule is that when you multiply or divide by a negative, you must flip the inequality. Okay, so we'll do some examples to do that, but you have to remember when you multiply or divide by a negative, you flip the inequality. Okay, get a different color. Okay, so here, this first one, this is 2 times x. So to get rid of a times 2, I divide by 2. And so x is greater than 6. So I'm going to make it on my number line. There's a 6 and a negative 6. It's an open circle at 6, and it goes to the right. And remember to make your arrow thick enough so that we can see what it is. All right, the next one, I have to get rid of a times negative 3, so I'm going to divide by negative 3. And now look, what I divided by a negative. So that means I have to flip that inequality. So now it becomes greater than a negative 1 over a negative 3 becomes a positive 1/3. So there's an example of what it means when you have to flip. So I have a closed circle, and it became a greater than, so I'm going to go to the right. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to go ahead and switch sides because a lot of people like it on the left, and it makes it easier when we're graphing when the x is on the left. So it's going to become 4x is less than negative 32. And so now I divide both sides by 4, and I get x is less than negative 8. Now, I do have a negative answer, but if you noticed here, I divided by positives. So that means I don't flip my inequality. You only flip your inequality when you divide or multiply by a negative. So I get 0, negative 8. It's an open circle, and x is less than it, so it goes to the left. Okay, so let's look and see what happens when we divide. Same process. So to get rid of a divide by 4, I'm going to multiply by 4. And I get x is greater than negative 8. Again, I have a negative answer, but I multiplied by a positive number. And since I multiplied by a positive number, I do not flip the inequality. So 8, negative 8, open circle, and this says x is greater. So I'm going to make my arrow go to the right. All right, for the next one, I have to get rid of a divide by negative 3, so I'm going to multiply by negative 3, and so those cross off. Now, I just multiplied by a negative, see? That's a negative, that's a negative. So I'm going to flip that sign, and so now I get greater than negative 4 times negative 3 is a positive 12. So I have a positive 12 open circle, and it's greater than, so I'm going to go to the right. And again, I flipped it because I multiplied by a negative 3. Okay, so here's another one. It's backwards, so I'm going to rewrite it so it's not backwards. And so it's supposed to be big at the x. So I like to get rid of these as 2 steps. Some of you may be good at getting rid of it with 1 step, but a lot of times I find kids forget that. So I multiply both sides by by 3. So I get negative 2x is greater than 9. And now I divide by negative 2. And look, I just divided by a negative. So I'm going to flip that sign. So I get x is greater than negative, there we go, negative 9 over 2. So that's a negative 4.5. So 0, 4.5, negative 4.5. It's an open circle, and we flipped it to make it a, oh, I didn't flip it. Look at that. Did you guys catch that? Probably did, and you're just like, what is she doing? Okay, so I highlighted it, but I didn't actually flip it. So I need to flip this thing, so it's going to be a less than. I'm glad I caught that. And so it goes to the left. Look at that pretty arrow. Okay? All right, we're going to skip the word problems for right now. We're going to come back. What I would like you to do is I would like you to try numbers 1, 2, 3, and possibly 4. Give them a try, see how you do, and then when you're ready, press play. Okay, so for the first one, you should have divided by 2. So you get x is less than negative 7. And again, the answer is negative 7, so you don't do anything with that. You don't have to flip because I didn't divide by negative. And I have an open circle and x is smaller, so it goes to the left. Okay, over here, I'm going to do it as a two-step process. I'm going to multiply by 3, and I get 2x is less than negative 12. And now I'm going to divide by 2. It's a positive 2, so it stays the same. I get x is less than negative 6. So it's an open circle, and x is less than, so it goes to the left. I have a lot of left ones so far. Okay, this one. I'm going to go ahead and multiply by the negative 5, so I take care of the negative and the 5 at the same time. So that's gone. But if you notice, I multiplied by a negative. So I'm going to flip that sign, and I'm going to remember to flip it this time, not like the last problem. So it becomes less than, and it was a negative 5, so it becomes less than negative 40, less than or equal to. So I'm going to put my numbers on my number line, and so it's less than or equal to negative 40, so it's a closed circle going to the left. My arrows are getting uglier and uglier, but it works. Okay, how'd you do on number 4? Number 4, it looks a little complicated, but you've got good at solving these equations in chapter 1. So what you do first is you combine your like terms. 2x and 4x makes 6x. And again, I like my x's on the back, so it's easier for me to see what direction to shade. So I'm going to flip these, but it points to the 6x, so I'm going to continue pointing to the 6x. And so now I'm going to divide both things by 6, and I get x is less than 2. So it's an open circle at 2, and it's less than, so I shade to the left. Okay, so you follow your basic rules for solving, and then you just have to remember that one, that if you multiply or divide by a negative, you have to flip the inequality. All right, now let's go back up to these word problems. So, write and solve. Okay, twice a number. So twice a number is when I do 2 times a number. Is greater than. Remember, whenever you see the is, you follow what it is, and it says is greater than 14. So is greater than 14. And now you would solve. So x is greater than 7. So open circle at 7, going to the right. Okay, the next one, the ratio of a number and negative 4. Remember, ratio, that's where the sign goes, so that's where my dividing is. I don't write divide with this divide by sign anymore. I will always do a fraction. So n over negative 4. And then there's the is, and it says is less than. So is less than negative 5. So I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 4. And if you notice, I just multiplied by a negative. So that means I have to flip that sign. And so I'm going to get n is greater than negative 5 times negative 4 is a positive 20. So now I just have to graph it. So it should be an open circle at 20, and we switched it to be a greater than because I had multiplied by a negative number. And that's it. So they're not very hard, it's just that one rule, this rule that we circled in red. If you multiply or divide by a negative, you must flip the inequality. So be careful and remember to flip it when it's necessary.